right north here, where it's a balmy 16 degrees and there's 20 inches of snow on the ground. If you do have questions based on my talk, I'm going to ask that you put them in the question box, and I will answer a few of them after the talk, but in the interest of respect for the rest of the program, I'm not going to take a protracted amount of time, but I will also publish my email address at the end of the talk, and you feel free to send me any questions you have, and I'll try and either answer them individually, or if I get a lot of questions on the same topic, we might just do an email blast to all the membership. So my topic is the real question that's come up: why are we talking about separating the American Rose Society from the gardens at the American Rose Center? And really this is in response to a financial shortfall that we've been suffering through for some time now. So I want to spend some time and talk about how our current situation did arise. So for that, I'm going to say, let's set the Wayback Machine. If you remember Rocky and his friends, we'll set the Wayback Machine for 2009. And in 2009, this document, a strategic plan, was presented to the board of directors at the board meeting during the Palm Springs convention. I was at that convention, but I was there as a civilian. I only joined the board 3 years later in 2012. So I don't know exactly what was said at the meeting, but I do know that only parts of this strategic plan were adopted at the time. So what was the status in 2009 that was reported in the document? Well, the American Rose Society had over 11,000 members. They had a staff of 25, if you can believe that. That was reduced by 20 since 2004. So it almost seems inconceivable that we would have had a staff of as many as 45 people, but there it was. And actually circumstances leading up to 2009 led to the reduction to that figure of 25. We had a board of directors of 10 district directors and 10 regional directors. So while the strategic plan did mention opportunities and strengths, I want to mention the challenges and threats that were cited at the time. Number one was declining membership. Number two was perceived conflicts of interest on the part of some of the members, that the two tasks of serving the membership and running the facilities at the gardens were in a conflict. Inadequately developed fundraising efforts, that we did not have at that time any sort of a professional fundraising or development person on the staff. Finances were not the primary focus of the organization, and there was a cash shortage in general accounts. I have to say that, and this applies to me as much as anybody else, but the members of the board are rose hobbyists for the most part, and we not have extensive experience in either fundraising or managing nonprofits or any related financial activities. And our comfort zone is talking about roses. Adverse economic conditions at the time, if you recall, 2009 was around about the time of the savings and loans crisis and the so-called Great Recession. It was cited that there was less interest in membership organizations. This is sort of a generational thing, but it applies across the board to churches, fraternal organizations, and hobbyist interest organizations such as ourselves. And an aging membership. It's pretty clear that our demographic has leaned toward the older generations. So what did we do in response to that strategic plan? Well, the MET, the Maintenance Endowment Trust, as it's generally called, financed a development officer on staff for 2 years. And that development officer, B.J. Harrington, did produce some very good results for us, but after the 2 years of funding was up, she had to leave because there was no funding available to continue to have someone on staff in that position. I'm jumping down to the bottom. The board adopted the mission and vision statements that we still have today. That was an easy thing to do. The plan suggested that we look at trial memberships, and those were established, but that was somewhat later. It suggested that we work on improving liaison and relationship with the local Rose societies, and what we now call the ARS Resource Committee for Local Societies was established, but that was in the previous term, the 2021-24 term. And they also suggested doing things like the webinars that we're doing today, but that was also not done until the 2021-2024 term. What's probably more of an issue is what we didn't do. We did not make any serious address toward the decline in membership. In 1997, we had nearly 25,000 members in the American Rose Society. And by 2009, we had lost 14,000 of those. So it's little mystery that we had to reduce the staff at that time. Each member we lose produces a loss in income, and we have to offset that by, or we should offset that by reducing our expenses. But now, in last year, 2025, our membership was down to about 3,500. So we've lost another substantial block of membership. But unfortunately, at this time, at least since I've been on the board, our expense budget's been pretty much stable at the same amount. And with the loss of membership, that on a year-by-year basis, that puts more and more increasing strain on the finances. So what we also did not do since 2009 was achieve financial stability or learn to live within our means. I already mentioned just some of that. Thanks in part to our development person, we did develop a relationship with a major donor for a number of years that provided us with $50,000 a year or more in a donation. We made the mistake of assuming that we were going to get that every year, and then all of a sudden we did not get that money every year, and that caused a problem. We don't do a good job of addressing inflation. We should be looking at our expenses, our due structures, and so forth on a year-to-year basis, but dues were raised around 2009, and we lost a number of members. That was to make up for inflation leading up to that time. And going up to about 2023, there was substantial inflation, and we said we need to increase the dues to do that. Doing it in a quantum leap, again, cost us many members because the sticker shop was just too much. Now, in the process and leading up to the time that my administration took office in September of 2004, we had taken out a line of credit with a bank in Shreveport, and the purpose of that, stated purpose of that, as approved by the board, was to pay off the debt on a smaller line of credit that we already had, to reduce the interest rate on that, and to do the credit cards, or pay off credit cards and the interest that was needed to be paid on those. But what was done instead, and somewhat to my surprise certainly, is that that line of credit, along with the other lines of credit, was used to pay bills and salaries. And there we are, fully in debt on those without the means to pay the principal. So what's our status now? We have about 3,500 members. Of those, 500 are life members who are not paying dues, and about another 200 are associate members who, such as spouses, who pay minimal dues. So we really only have about 2,800 full dues paying members at this time, which to me is really shocking. We have 4 staff members now. 1 full-time, which is Allison, 3 part-time, which is Kanisha, Ryan, and Emily. Our board is still 18 district directors, but the number of regional directors was reduced to 4. That's a minor restructuring of the board, but it falls short of what was recommended back in 2009. So what are our challenges and threats in 2026? If this looks familiar, it's because exactly the same as what it was in 2009. Our membership continues to decline, has continued to decline. Yes, it may be peaked up a bit from time to time, but the overall trend obviously has been downward. People still believe that there is a conflict of interest between managing the membership activities and the facility management. We still do not have any staff support really on fundraising efforts because we simply cannot hire someone. We certainly have suffered from a cash shortage in general accounts. Our makeup of the board is similar. Adverse economic conditions now are not so much a recession, but there's inflation that's gone up considerably, especially when you go to the grocery store. You can clearly see that. There still is less membership and interest in membership organizations, and our membership is still aging. And if we are unable to attract newer, younger members, the aging process is simply going to continue to contribute to a decline. So why split the American Rose Society and the American Rose Center? Why are we doing this, and how will it help? Well, let's first of all look at the challenges that we can address. If we have separate organizations for the gardens and the society, then the conflict of interest between member service and facility management goes away, because the ARS will deal with membership services. The American Rose Center staff will deal with managing the facility. We can focus on our finances and cash shortage by reducing the amount of expense that the American Rose Society would be subject to. Our fundraising efforts, well, we can concentrate on fundraising simply for the American Rose Society, and the American Rose Center can concentrate on raising funds for the purpose of the garden. If you recall, a few years ago, we had big fundraising efforts for the Great Garden Restoration Project, which was very successful. The gardens are definitely beautiful now. It was money well spent. But one has to wonder if that did not take attention away from fundraising for the American Rose Society in general. So let's look at expenses and how we have to deal with them. Every week, Roger, our treasurer, has to look at the amount of money in the bank and the bills to be paid and the priority on paying the bills. So number one, and this happens every 2 weeks, is payroll. Payroll comes first. We have to pay our staff the salary, the associated taxes, benefits such as their health insurance if they're signed up for that. Then we have to deal with insurance on the property and the liability insurance. Those premiums come due. It's absolutely essential that they be paid. Utilities are a priority. Electricity on the property in Shreveport can be as much as $5,000 a month, especially during the summer when the air conditioners are running full blast. Also part of the facilities, namely the Cleveland building and the area around that, are on town water, and that bill has to be paid. Then because we have debts, the interest on the debts totals something like $1,900 a month. Then if there's any money left over after all these other issues are settled, then we look at the bills that were left and pay as many as we can, with the knowledge that a week later the whole process has to start again. So let's consider the management responsibilities, because right now everything you see on here is the responsibility of the American Rose Society. But if we divide up, then the American Rose Center will be dealing with maintaining the gardens, maintaining the buildings, paying the utilities, soliciting and putting on events such as Christmas in Roseland, booking weddings and so forth on the facilities, building relations with the Northwest Louisiana and surrounding area communities, raising funds for the garden, and hosting the Save the Ramblers project, which is actually, of course, on the nurseries are on the garden's ground. On the American Rose Society, the responsibilities are for maintaining the membership database, which has been quite a project over the last several months, trying to sort out bad data, get everything up to date and rolling again. And credit certainly goes to Allison for being a part of that. We will still oversee the consulting Rosarian and judging programs. We'll deal with the member relations, and that includes answering the phone and answering emails, and Allison and Kanisha are certainly committed to doing this in a timely manner. If they can't take your call at the time it comes in, they will call you back. I guarantee that. For running the education programs, such as our webinars, for working with the Research Trust, the Education Trust, to again promote research activities and preservation efforts. The American Rose Society will not be abandoning the Save the Ramblers project, but we will support that, even though it will actually physically reside in the American Rose Center. We can do our fundraising, which is specific to supporting the activities of the American Rose Society. And finally, we have to deal with the, unfortunately, neglected for the time being, Modern Roses database, because with all the other issues we've had to deal with, we haven't been able to tackle what needs to be done with that. In terms of financial responsibilities, again, as it stands now, the American Rose Society is responsible for all of this. But after the division, the American Rose Center will have its own payroll for administration, garden staff, an event planner, and accounting. They'll be responsible for supporting the garden and building maintenance with the assistance of the Maintenance Trust, which will be, the ARC will be the beneficiary then of the Maintenance Trust. They'll be paying the utilities, and they'll be dealing with the property and liability insurance. And the American Rose Society will have its staff payroll, deal with membership, programs, publications, and accounting. There's still liability insurance for the American Rose Society. We have been offered free tenancy at the American Rose Center for 3 years, with consideration beyond that, which is great because we wouldn't have any rents to consider. We have some expenses for shared office equipment between the ARC and the American Rose Center. Any other miscellaneous expenses, and would be supported by the education, research, and the American Rose Society Endowment Trusts. So when all is said and done, we still have challenges, and of course the major challenges are declining membership, which are related to our aging membership. And to ensure the ongoing success of the American Rose Society, we need to make a huge effort to recruit and retain members, because our numbers are simply too low at this point in time. We do have a membership committee which can be activated again, but I think it's a responsibility for all of us to try and find new members for the American Rose Society. And the more members we get, the more we can do. It's as simple as that. It's hard to believe that in a country as big as the United States, that only 3,000 people or so would have enough interest in roses to be a member of the American Rose Society. So we need to get out there and find them. we also really need to see what we can do to improve our fundraising efforts. So what's the progress toward this? Well, in late last year, the board of directors approved the concept of the split, and approved with some dissension the price we expect to get, and that would be $600,000, and that would be coming from the maintenance trust. Right now, we have lawyers working on the formal agreement documents. The American Rose Center Incorporated was formed as a nonprofit under guidance of Marilyn Wellen and an attorney that she retained. The maintenance trust has retained a lawyer, which is the person working on the documents chiefly, and the American Rose Society has a lawyer that mainly has been for second opinions and for trying to keep the process moving. Unfortunately, this process has been rather protracted and frustratingly so, and we hope that fairly soon we get an agreement that we can work with and proceed. So what are the next steps is that once we have this agreement that's satisfactory to all parties, I will transmit it to the board of directors along with a motion to allow me to proceed to close the transaction. Assuming they approve that motion, which will be based on their approval of the agreement, we'll go ahead and close the deal. As part of that is originally conceived that some of the proceeds from the transaction would be used to retire all the American Rose Society debts at that time. The maintenance trust declaration document needs to be amended. Once those amendments are received, they will be submitted to the board of directors for their approval. And finally, a new strategic planning committee will be convened, and Carrie Bergs, excuse me, my vice president, and Chris Van Cleve will be heading up that strategic planning committee. So finally, when all is said and done, we will have a quote-unquote new American Rose Society dedicated to fulfilling its educational, research, and preservation mission as a member-focused organization. But wait, there's more. Some latest news. At the very end of last year, actually on New Year's Eve, the American Rose Society Endowment Trust received a request of $800,000 from the estate of Don and Mary Myers. And Don and Mary were great ARS members or friends of mine, and they're very sorely missed, but we certainly honor their memory by acknowledging this gift, tremendous gift of money. At the ARSET trustee meeting this month, there was an agreement to loan $200,000 of that to the American Rose Society at 5% annual interest, which amounts to about $833 a month, to be repaid from the separation proceeds once we receive them. The purpose of this was to pay off both lines of credit and all credit card bills, and that has been done. They are paid in full. At this moment, the American Rose Society is out of debt. Furthermore, some of these accounts have been closed. And that was particularly important with the line of credit with the Red River Bank in Shreveport, since that was a secured line of credit based on a lien on the property, and that lien needs to be released to complete the separation, and that should be done if it's not already been done, and that will simplify the whole closing procedure. So doing this also saves the ARS $1,000 to $1,100 a month on interest until such time as the proceeds are received, in which case that payment of $1,000 to $1,100 goes away, and every bit certainly helps. So that's my talk. There's obviously more planning to be done, but I don't really care to speculate on what that may be. There have been a few ideas floated, but nothing concrete at this point. So I do want to get contact information out there for people to know who to go to. If you have membership issues such as renewals, new memberships, login problems, anything related to what might be in the database, please contact Allison. You see her email address is membership@rose.org, and there's a phone number where you can reach her. Ganesha handles programs such as consulting Rosarians, judges awards, that sort of thing. You can reach her at programs@rose.org, and again at that phone number. She is part-time, so she may not take your call immediately if she isn't in, but she will certainly get back to you. And if you have any questions on any of this as things proceed, there's my email address. It's my name without any punctuation at charter.net. So thank you. I'm going to stop sharing. And let's see if there's a couple of questions. How can we volunteer on a more national level to help the ARS? Well, yeah, I would say the most pressing issue we have is recruiting members, and you know you can help on a local level with your local Rose Society, but certainly recruiting members will help on a national level. I would say that's probably the most important thing. And I knew this was going to come up. The ARS magazine will continue to be digital, and yeah, that's true. Right now, as it looks like the budget, we would fall short of sufficient funds to be able to go back to print at this time. You know, the only other possibility would be to try to raise dues again to bring up the money, but I think our members have voted with their feet that that's not a viable solution. So we are committed to continuing to publish on a digital basis, but that's about the best we can do. Another question about that is, consider doing it. How much does it cost to print and mail each issue of the magazine? It's about right now it's about $10,000 an issue, so to publish 6 issues will be $60,000 a year. You know, if we have 2,800 people paying $50 a year for membership, you can do the math and see how much money is coming in. That we have to work on a fairly austere basis. Will the Rose Handbook be printed or available online? Yes, we are going to mail out a Rose Handbook. It'll probably be toward the end of next month. I think one last question here is have you considered publishing the magazine for public sales? I honestly don't think that's a viable option. You have to know how many copies to print. You know, more importantly, you have to get a distributor and you have to get it on shelves. I think that would be a very tough row to hoe. I think I'm going to have to wrap it up there so we can get on to our panel discussion. I do thank you for your comments, and you're welcome to email me any further questions that you might have.
Well, thank you, President Dorschel, for updating us about the state of ARS and transitioning to the future. Today's moderator, ARS President Craig Dorschel, will now tell us about Bill Kozemchak, Ken Borrmann, Paula, Grabowski, Linda Clark. And Craig will lead the discussion for the Roundtable Discussion group. Now, if you have a question for the Roundtable Discussion team, please post it in the question box. And if you go to the upper right-hand corner, there's some documents for you about how to take care of roses and what to do during the winter. So go up there. It's the document. Looks like it's got a paper clip. There's 2 documents up there that you can download for your personal use. So moving forward.
Okay, well, thank you, Gary. I do want to introduce our 4 panelists, starting with Paula Grabowski. She is president of the Humboldt Rose Society in Northern California. She is a retired IT project manager, and she is from McKinleyville, California. I believe I heard her say earlier she grows about 250 roses along with rhododendrons, hydrangeas, and daffodils. And she also likes to read and paint with watercolors. Ken Borrmann has been growing and exhibiting roses for over 30 years. He grows 130 bushes consisting mainly of hybrid teas and many flora roses. Exhibits at local district and national shows, and has won the National Nicholson Bowl 3 times, which is quite an accomplishment, along with 2 National Hybrid Tea Queens and 1 National Ben Williams Trophy. It's also won numerous district McFarlands and Hybrid Tea and Many Flora Queens. He serves on the board of the Philadelphia Rose Society and is also a member of the West Jersey Rose Society and has been a speaker at many local and district events. And I have seen Ken's roses at shows, and they're pretty amazing. Bill Kozemchak is currently president and newsletter editor for the Philadelphia Rose Society, Penn Jersey District Photography and Trophy Chair, the ARS Miniature Committee, and chair of the ARS Exhibitors Committee. He lives in Levittown, Pennsylvania, outside of Philadelphia, and he grows a lot of roses, like over 1,000. And his specialty is shrubs, climbers, and the likes. And also does a very outstanding job with those, and is also an outstanding photographer, as is also his wife, Kathy. Linda Clark, for the past 20 years, has been a member of the San Diego Rose Society and others. She grows, exhibits roses, and has quite an impressive garden at her home in San Diego that I've had the pleasure of seeing on 2 occasions when I've been to conventions there. She is a consulting Rosarian horticulture judge and arrangement judge. And she chairs the San Diego Rose Shows, including the Nationals in 2014, 2018, and exhibits as much as possible. She also enters roses at the San Diego County Fair. I could say she's a former district director for the Pacific Southwest District and had been a member of the executive committee during that time. So I'll let you folks, if you want to say anything more about yourselves, please go ahead and do so. Linda says no. And Paula says no. Okay. If you have questions for the panel, please put them in the question box. I'm going to be monitoring that, and I can pass that along to try and get some direction to the discussion here. But I think since we're gearing this more toward the northern part of the country, where the climate has been pretty harsh, and actually east of the Mississippi. It seems like the even in Louisiana, it seems like they're part of the North for the time being too. I think it's snowing in the Carolinas right now. That's something else. So going towards spring, I guess the first task we face in the colder climates is not adding, but removing winter protection. If you haven't put any winter protection down now, it's probably too late. I can tell you I have plenty right now that fell from the sky last weekend. And as far as taking it off is concerned, well, I guess that's up to Mother Nature when it gets warm. But I'll ask the panel when they unprotect their roses.
Bill, Linda, Bill, please unmute yourselves.
Unmuted.
And I know you don't have to protect, so Bill, go ahead.
Yeah, I don't really put any winter protection down. I mulch the garden every year. I add a few inches of mulch, and lately I've been planting the roses a little bit deeper. Used to plant them at ground level, like they said, for our area, but lately I've been putting the bud union down a little bit just to protect it. We don't normally get extreme cold in the winter. It's rare that we get single digits. This year we've probably had 8 or 10 already nights, but we have snow cover to insulate them. So that's one thing I've been doing with the newer roses I put in. I've started planting them a little bit deeper just to give them that protection. We have more issue with late freezes. Normally we were fairly warm throughout the winter here. Last year, I don't know if we had any snow. But lately we've been getting some years where we've had freezes late March, early April, sometimes after the roses started to grow, and that kind of takes a toll on the canes. So to kind of help that, I've started planting a little bit deeper.
Usually I winter protect, but I haven't the last couple of years. The winter protection I have now is the same that Craig has and Bill has. Lots of snow, which is great. When it gets cold like that, it's great protection for them. So when it starts to melt, that's when I'll go out and start working in the yard. If there are warmer days in February, I will go out and start some light pruning, just generally to bring them down a little bit. And then I probably do my heavier prune in March, middle of March, so that by the end of March, everything's set and ready to go. If I winter protect and I use mulch, I will probably start to bring that off the bushes in early March or whatnot, because it's pretty safe then. If there's going to be a late freeze, as Bill said, I'll probably try and protect the lower breaks in March by putting some of the mulch back and just kind of jerry rig something in case that happens.
Oh, I know you're on the Pacific Coast, so in Northern California. Do you have to do any protection there?
No, none at all. Our winters are very mild. We only have maybe, in the 20 years I've lived in this area, 2 snows, and they lasted for like a day and a half, and they were very mild. So mostly our winter temperatures are in the 40s to 60s.
Okay.
So
well,
I'm sorry, Craig, our biggest problem in the winter is sunburn. I mean, this is still what my yard looks like. I mean, terribly, but not. And so now I'm going out trying to prune, but it's 82 degrees and sunburn is a problem. I know that sounds funny, but you can lose a whole cane with that because now there's no leaves. And anyway, so that's our problem.
Okay. Well, okay, so our roses are thawed out, hopefully. So the next issue, the next task that comes up, I guess, is pruning.
Yeah, I will tend to prune my hybrid teas, since I exhibit a lot. I'll prune them down maybe to 12 to 18 inches, depending on the time of the show. And spring shows are pretty much set. This year, one of our shows is towards the end of May. So I won't prune quite as low. I'll prune a little bit higher just so I get, otherwise my roses will bloom 2 weeks after the show, which will be great for my garden, but not for the show. So I can adjust a little bit in that regard. If with multiple bushes of the same variety, I might do some lower and some higher, just so I know I have something of that variety. If you can and you have multiple bushes of a variety, you can try that and see how that works for you. Also, by doing that, you might have a continual flush of that variety for a longer period of time rather than all at once. It depends what you're looking for.
Yeah, a lot of times I'll do early winter, late fall pruning, like the end of November, beginning of December. I'll start cutting back some of my hardy shrubs and climbers. This year we got cold pretty quick, so I didn't do a whole lot of that. Basically, just stuff that was going to whip around or stuff that was hanging out. So, like Ken said, once it starts warming up, I'll probably be out there, sometime in March. Start with that stuff, and then I usually save the minis and mini floors and hybrid teas toward the end of the pruning to prune them down. And I probably don't prune down quite as low as Ken does for mine. I leave them a little bit higher because I'm not growing these big hybrid teas. So I usually leave the bushes a little bit higher than he does. But hopefully, I'll be done pruning before the forsythia blooms, which is what they recommend here. But since I have so many, I said normally I'll get a lot of stuff done November and early December, but this year I didn't.
Some of our members start pruning in December, but it's usually to take height off more than anything else because of the winds. But we generally have all of our pruning sessions in January and February and try to finish before the end of February. Our rose show is the second week in June, and because we have such a mild temperature, it takes a long time for the roses to open. In fact, they don't open until the very end of May, first week in June. So we try to get ahead of that by pruning earlier. And again, we prune. It depends on if you're going to show your roses or if you're just going to have roses in your garden. And we prune lower, like Ken said, if we're trying to produce roses for the rose show. So we have longer canes. But generally, and like Bill said, for shrubs, we do a lot of the pruning on shrubs in December. Yeah.
Yeah, up here in New England, it's usually the forsythia rule, and that can be anytime from late March till about the middle of April, I guess, just depending on what the climate's been doing. If it keeps up being this cold, we'll be probably in the middle of April. Backing up a bit, I have a question here of what's the best way to eradicate overwintering black spot? Dormant oil, maybe, or when to do it? Any thoughts?
Years ago, when I first started, I used to do a dormant spray. Early spring, when it started warming up, I would use the lime sulfur and horticultural oil. But it's probably been 15 years or more since I've done that. Normally now, once I get done pruning, I might go out and just do a spray with my regular spray just to kind of hit the ground and the canes. But I haven't done any dormant stuff lately.
Yeah, I just try. Go ahead.
In our area, we just pick up. We're really big into organics and feeding the soil. And what we do is, if there's any black spot in the area, we always ask our members to pick up their fallen leaves, take some of them off in the fall, because the black spot overwinters, the bacteria or the spores overwinter. So we don't spray here. We just, at least in my society, we're totally organic. So it's feed your soil and clean up everything as the, throughout the summer and the fall.
I think keeping the beds clean is really important. I do not use a dormant spray. I'll make sure after I prune and everything's ready to go, and probably before I mulch, I just make sure I blow the beds out of any leaves. And I tend to do that throughout the summer as well. I blow the fallen leaves away from the bushes, because I've seen some people that take the black spot leaves off of the bush and then they just drop it on the soil. Well, you haven't done anything. You've just relocated the black spot spore, and it's still a couple splashes and it's right back on your bush. I might spray once early, like Bill said, just to try and kill some of the spores with maybe manzate. Other than that, I really don't start the spray program until probably into May, and maybe even into June. Depends on the weather. If the weather's dry, I'm not too worried about black spot. If the weather's wet, I worry about black spot. If the weather's dry, we have other problems, but not black spot. So it depends on the weather. So every year is different. I do keep a log of what I do so I can see what works and what doesn't work.
Yeah, I also tend to keep my beds kind of cleaned out during the year. I blow the leaves out pretty regular. We have one exhibitor who doesn't like to use a blower because he doesn't want to spread the spores around. He uses a shop vac to clean his beds out.
Okay. Sort of a mixture of questions here, but on the subject of pruning, one question is there the same timing for pruning climbers and ramblers, I guess, as opposed to hybrid teas?
Yeah, normally most people do. Like I said, years ago, I started pruning the climbers, like I said, in late fall, early winter, and I would cut the laterals to maybe 8 or 10 inches and then go back in the spring and I'd cut them back to maybe, 4 to 6. And it seemed like every spring I was just cutting off green stuff because they're hardier and don't get any winter kill. So then probably 5-6 years ago, I just started cutting them back, laterals on the climbers back in the fall to, 4 to 6 inches. And then in the spring, there really wasn't anything to do with them. So I kind of got a head start, and I probably got 50 or 60 climbers in the yard. So that was a big time saver for me in the spring. But if you don't have a lot, you may not want to do that. You can prune them in the spring, same as you will with the other roses.
There's another question for Bill, and I think Linda may want to chime in too, is what electric pruner do you use? What factor influenced your purchase?
Yeah, we had showed these last week. My brother had gotten me a Milwaukee. It's a battery-powered pruner. He does landscaping. I work with him, and he had gotten a couple pair of them for tree branches pruning. So he says, "Oh, you should have one of those to do your roses." And I thought, it's kind of heavy. It's not real fast. So I said, probably, I wouldn't use it all that much. Well, he ended up giving me one for my birthday. And so I'm probably not going to use them much. But then instead of taking loppers out, I take that out with me. And it's so much nicer and so much easier. You don't have 2 or 3 foot handles to try to get between canes. And you just put it in whatever angle you want. And it'll cut tree branches, so it goes right through rose canes, no problem. Even when I trim up some of the bud unions that have gotten real big and woody, if I want to trim stuff off of that, it chops that no problem, faster than a saw would if you're trying to cut real old hard woody stuff. The only thing is you just have to be careful with it. Keep your fingers away from the blades, because you hit the button, it's cutting whatever is in the way. So I've heard a lot of people talked about getting them, and some of the people I've talked to here have went out and bought them, and they're very, very happy with it. So my loppers rarely come out of the the thing anymore. If I have my pruners, and if I need something heavy, I'll usually grab that to cut it with.
Yeah, I just bought this one on Amazon about 3 years ago. It's done well. It comes with 2 batteries, a little charger. It's really light. I mean, I have small, it's really light, and you can just fit it right into the crown real easily. And it's just an Amazon product. It's, off-brand, Koham. I don't even think they have it anymore. It's just a different brand now, but it looks very similar. It's just got a, like a really easy handle. That's all.
So
they're great.
My husband uses a DeWalt pruner, which is pretty heavy. So I bought one like Linda's, which is smaller, and I can actually get into the center with it. The DeWalt's a little awkward if you're going to the center, but generally my husband cuts all the large canes first and then goes in and trims everything up. Yeah. But it's a time saver if you've got a lot of roses. You can trim a rose bush in like 2 minutes. It's really fast.
Yeah, I've been very happy with mine. Like I said, for the heavier stuff, it works really well. Like I said, I don't have to bother with the things, but the Milwaukee ones are heavy, like the DeWalt ones. They're made real heavy duty. But if you want something smaller for people that have, issues with hand, pressure and using a lot of pruners are getting, sore. There's a lot of different ones out there now, so it's a nice tool to have.
I have a reciprocal saw that I use for what I call pruning with extreme prejudice, but sometimes it's easier to get into a tight space for a big old cane with the blade of that saw than it is with any other type of saw or a lopper or something. So that's a possibility too. Let's see what we have.
And I'd also
go ahead.
I'd also mentioned last week about pruners. I'm left-handed, so for years I had right-handed pruners, and no matter how sharp they were, they didn't always seem to cut well. So I ended up getting a pair of Felco number 9s, for left-handers, and even when they're dull, they cut better than the other ones did when they were sharp. It seems like. So there's a tip for anybody that's a left-hander. And also they do. There's different sizes of pruners. This is a number 9. This is I guess it's like a 7 for right-handers, and this is the number 6 here, which is made for someone with smaller hands. You can see the size difference, and the blade's a little smaller if you need to get in smaller places. And then someone had given me a pair of, these are number 13s. If you have some real big heavy canes and you don't want to carry around, a lopper or something else, these give you a lot more leverage. So that's another tool I hadn't known about, but they have a nice selection of stuff, and they also have pruners with rotating handles that is supposed to, lessen your tension, less stress on your hand. The bottom handle turns as you're cutting. There's a nice selection of tools out there.
Yeah, they do. I used Felco 2s for a long time, and I switched to the smaller ones the past couple of years, and it's a lot easier. It cuts just as well. And sometimes if I need them at a show, the smaller ones are nice in trying to get, and either if I'm recutting the stems under the water before I show them, or if I'm cutting leaves or whatnot, the smaller ones are very nice rather than have a big one trying to work with it. It seems clumsy. So the small ones work well for me.
I also use Felco.
Yeah. And one other thing as far as pruners, this is a pruner sharpener, Borrmann. Wendy Tilley sells them through the Rose Gardener. When I first got my Felcos, they give you a triangular stone to sharpen them with, and that never really seemed to work super well for me because it's so thick. For this one here, the blade of it's wide, there's a fine and a coarse, but it's a thin blade this way, so you can get all the way to the end of the pruners with a the Felco stone, I was never able to really get close to where you're cutting most of the time. So that's a really nice tool. I love to have that. I try to keep them sharp, and it's pretty quick to use. You come in and if you're doing a lot of pruning in the spring, I'll prune for a little bit and come in and just give them a quick sharpening. And the sharper they are, the easier your pruning is.
We use a diamond shaped. I don't have my tools with me, but it's a diamond shaped one, and that's one of the first things that people ask us is how to sharpen, like the cutting blade of the secateurs. But and my husband also uses a Dremel. There's there on some of our heavier loppers and other things.
Yeah, Frank Benardella told me he had a little diamond file he had gotten somewhere he used on his, which is similar to this. It's nice and easy. You can get to the edge of the blade really good, and does a really nice job. But it does make it a lot easier. I'll be pruning for a while, and then I'll come in and sharpen them, and I go back out. And it does make the job a lot easier when you're doing a lot. Pruning 1,000 roses, I'm out there for quite a while.
You must go through a lot of batteries on your electric pruners.
No, the big ones, I just use that basically for the the older woodier canes. Everything else I do with my Felcos, and they do a really nice job.
And of course, in terms of sharpening Felcos, you can always replace a blade if it gets to be too much, which is an advantage for that. And just to remind the members out there is that you can get a discount code as an ARS member for Felco products. So I have a question here. Another one on pruning is, when you're pruning for continuous bloom, what is the variation in height, like 6 inches of difference on cane height, etc.?
One thing Frank told me was, the older I get, the higher I prune. So that's a consideration for some people. Basically, if you prune low, you're going to get longer stems, bigger blooms. You prune high, you're going to get faster repeat with more flowers. Also, limiting the number of canes will affect how many flowers you get, and that's something that Ken does.
And I mentioned last week too, when you prune, make sure the pith, the center of the cane, is white. So if you're pruning, I can't imagine I'm going to have white centers on the canes 2 feet up when I see them next month. So I'm going to have to prune lower just because of the winter. But if you prune and the pith is medium brown to brown, the cane will die sometime in June as soon as it warms up. So it's just better to go down. It'll delay the new growth a little bit, but it's worth it. But I've done some years, I've actually cut down to 6 to 8 inches. I don't do it that low anymore, but 12 inches, you could experiment. Like if you have 3, piece roses, do one at 12, one at 18, one at 24 inches. And it also depends on how many canes you have left. If you have a large bush, you might want to leave more canes. I tried, as Bill said, I tried to limit the canes maybe to between 3 and 5 canes. I try and form it in a vase so that the center is open, and so the growth is coming away from the center. I'm not too particular about always pruning to an inside eye, because every time I tried to do that, it did what it wanted to do anyway. So I thought, why stress myself out about it? So I just do it and see how it goes. But the center, the pith needs to be white or almost white.
Yeah, one year we had a bad winter, and I left a lot of questionable canes. They weren't real bad, but they were not white, and they were not real healthy. But I didn't want to chop the bushes down to nothing, so I left them, and I had a nice June bloom. Everything bloomed well, but as soon as it got hot, the middle or end of June, the canes just turned black and died back. So I ended up cutting the roses back to where they should have been cut originally. And in the fall, instead of having 5 or 6 foot bushes, I had 3 foot tall bushes. So that was the last time I ever left questionable canes. So like Ken said, if you have to cut it down, even if I have to cut it to the bud union, that's what I do now, because it's just, you will get flowers, but as soon as it gets hot, that cane's going to die, and then you're starting all over again, which is not what the bushes want to do in the heat of the summer.
Great. There are a few questions about people just wanting to be reminded of what brand the electric furnace were. So
I have Milwaukee. I have Milwaukee ones.
I have DeWitt and just a Amazon nondescript one. It was just small for my hands.
Yeah.
Yeah, and mine is also an Amazon one. I don't think this brand is available anymore, but one like it, which it's just small and light, is probably still available.
Yeah. Yeah, Amazon has, well, I have some of the stuff too. It's Chinese made and has whatever brand name they put on it. Bill has Milwaukee, and I think I heard DeWalt, and those are major power tool manufacturers. So you would find them possibly online, but maybe in hardware stores. Okay, I'm looking down there. Well,
I had mentioned last.
Go ahead, Bill.
I had mentioned last week, while things are slow in the garden, it's a great time to get to your doctor, get a tetanus shot if you need it, a booster. We had a doctor in our society recommended at least every 10 years, but he would go with 5. So if you haven't had a tetanus booster for a while, get one, because tetanus is a soil-borne bacteria, and we're getting stuck in the garden all the time and working with dirt. So it's a problem you can avoid, and it's a good time of year to do it before you're spending all your free time in the garden.
Yeah. You don't want to spend all your free time in the hospital with tetanus, that's for sure. Just backing up a bit, I guess this is for Linda. What does sunburn look like, and how does it affect canes? And that's from someone in Houston.
Oh, yeah, Houston might have that same trouble. It is a blackening. It basically is a blackening and kind of almost a blistering of whitish. It can be black or whitish or grayish. That just is on the sunny side of the cane, and then just basically it will open up almost like a canker at the end. So it basically just kills the cane. And talk about the brown pith, like Ken was doing, it just will create that in itself. So when it's really hot, and especially a lot of people are told to dormant spray, it's a disaster if you dormant oil spray. And our weather has been very hot and very sunny. It will just, oil will exacerbate that situation of sunburn. So it's just basically a blackening and darkening of the cane, pretty much all where the sun hits it. So I don't know if that helped.
Yeah. And another Sunbelt question. Chili thrips have hit hard here in Texas. Any suggestions on how to get ahead of them now? I do plan to dormant spray at least 2 times.
Yeah, again, I'm kind of like Ken and Bill. I don't really dormant spray. I have scale, which then it's just I localize that and just kind of do some oil on that if I need to. The chili thrips, I don't find dormant spray working on those as well, but I do spray. I'm not organic. I wish I could be. I spray routinely for if I have to, too often if I need to, during the chili thrip season, which for us and probably for Houston starts in early June, might even start a little bit earlier now, and then goes, has cycles just like regular thrips. So also, again, going back to removing all of the debris. So if you see chili thrips, my first thing, cut it off, throw it away, in the trash, not in the recycle, and then spray. And you spray anything that you use for regular thrips. I'm not sure what's legal in your state. They've just outlined imidacloprid here. So, but there's lots of things. Lots of people use Conserve, which is an organic, rated organic, for chili thrips. That sometimes works for me, sometimes does not. It's difficult. Sorry, I wish I had.
All right. There was a question on what you spray with, and I think that was just answered. So let's see. While we're on the subject of pruning, there's a couple questions about cane borers. So, what do you do if it looks like a cane borer has gotten right down to the bud union? Let's see what else. I think the other one is, what do you use to close your prune ends to prevent cane borers?
If I have a cane borer, it's same as the pith. I just go as far down until there's no more damage. I believe Lou last week said, and I have done this in the past, on larger canes, you can use, I used wood glue to seal the end of the cane. They don't like to bore their way through glue, and that does work. I haven't had a whole lot, so I haven't done it of late. But if I do find a cane that has been bored down, I will just cut down as low as I can until I find a white pith. And otherwise, you're going to get the larvae, and they're going to come up and they're going to repeat the whole process. So you want to get rid of them.
Yeah, years ago I used to seal mine when I didn't have quite as many, but it's been a long time since I've done anything, and used to just use the regular Elmer's glue. People have used shellac. Some people have said, use thumbtacks. I've seen a lot of different things for them, but anymore I'll get a few canes here and there. But with so many, there's, it's not a lot of damage on one plant. So, and if I do seal, like Ken said, I cut it back, down till I find the larva, or if the larva is gone, so the opening's not in there for stuff to get inside the cane.
Yeah, while we're still on pruning, what do you do when you have canes that are 2 inches thick, very old, and very few bud eyes? I think I know what I would do, but I'll let the panel speak.
I mean, if there's no bud eyes, I'll just try and go lower. I mean, and just cut. If I have to cut it all the way down, I'll cut it all the way down. But to leave a 2-inch cane, because I have about 925 fewer bushes than Bill, I don't have an electric pruner, so I'll use the lobbers. But after hearing this from 3 of you about using the electric pruners, don't be surprised if next time we have this conversation, I have purchased electric pruners.
Yeah, good birthday present for Ruth.
It would be good, except my birthday's in December, and so
anniversary. Father's Day?
They're
Valentine's Day?
About to say, no, I don't think so.
Yeah.
But yeah, if there's no bud eye, there's no sense of it's going to die back eventually. It's just going to sit there maybe for a year or two, and then eventually it's out. So I would cut down lower. I mean, usually you get thrilled over having a cane that's that thick, but without the bud eye, it's not going to produce anything.
Yeah. If it were,
I don't know if that answers the question or not.
If it were me, if I could chime in, if I have an old gnarly 2-inch cane that's not producing anything, it's time to get the saw out, and I would take it right off at the base.
Mm-hmm. That's what I meant in the vernacular.
I call that pruning with extreme prejudice.
Exactly.
And just before we move on, there's another question or two about the sunburn. Is there any way to prevent it or address it?
Umbrellas.
Yeah, you're right. I mean, a lot of people that grow in, if you're showing and growing, I don't do this, there's no way, but do use umbrellas and do shade cloths and things like that. Unfortunately for us, the sun usually isn't this strong and this hot at this time of year. So this is like you guys are having the cold side, we're having the very hot side hot, dry winds, and it's not good. So I prune from December to February at the end of it. So right now I've kind of laid back. I'm not pruning my ones that are in my severe sun area because of that, and they still have leaves and flowers. So I'm okay with that. Hopefully the weather changes. That's all I'm sorry, I wish I had better answers.
Okay, well, after we get done pruning, the next big task that comes along is fertilizing. So we have some questions about fertilization. Let's see. Well, I guess the main question that people are asking is, what are you feeding your soil? And this is also promoting organic gardening can be a big attraction for growing younger members.
I can address that. We feed our soil all year long, but in the spring we put aged steer manure and aged horse manure on our beds. And because we use organics, you can fertilize throughout the whole year. But we do actually do an extra session of manures in March after the pruning. And if we use any kind of chemical fertilizer, we use a GMB product called Paradise, which is really good, before the Rose Show. But that's really about the only packaged fertilizer that we use. Mostly it's manures and compost all year. We have very healthy soil in our garden.
Yeah, I think that's the key. It's the soil. It needs to be very well taken care of. You can feed it all you want. If you have lousy soil, it's not going to really do too well. So I start off with alfalfa, as I mentioned last week, and I'll do probably a cup of alfalfa per bush. And again, depends on how big your bushes are. I'm sure if I lived in California, I'd be putting 5 cups of alfalfa in my bushes. Wouldn't have any money for food, but that's beside the point. But we can, by doing that, it really stirs the soil activity. I'll use blood meal, I'll use chicken manure, and I'll use fish meal. Not necessarily all at once, but I might space them out a little bit. I do that in the summer when I get ready for the fall, but that's a later discussion. But I'll do that a little bit in the spring as well, just to get the soil activated, to get the stuff in the soil going, and that helps feed the roses. It's a continuous flood of food for the bushes, and when they're just starting out in the spring, that's good. The fertilizer can be a little dangerous, the liquid fertilizer in the spring. If the bushes are smaller and the feeder roots are just starting out, you can burn the roots, which is not good. But the organics really give it a constant flow, and it's almost impossible to burn the roots with organics. I don't recommend trying, but if you do too much blood meal, you could possibly do that. So I try and be careful with that. And then after a while, when I dig out bushes and to maybe move them, the soil's coming up black, because it has so many years of organic use that it really has shown that it really pays off very well.
Yeah, I also use the alfalfa meal. Right after I get done pruning, I put my fertilizer down. I'll do, like Ken said, usually like a cup, for the bigger bushes. Minis a little bit less. I use Rose Stone, which is an organic fertilizer. Same thing, probably the real big bushes probably get a cup, and then smaller ones will get less. I used to use a granular fertilizer, thinking it might give the bushes a little bit earlier, fertilizer. Breakdowner can use that a little quicker than the other, but probably 5-6 years ago, I stopped doing that, and I switched to adding chicken manure along with the Rose Stone, the compost of chicken manure, and the bushes seem to have responded to that. And it also gives you a lot less salt buildup, than using the chemical fertilizers in the garden. And I also, when I put the fertilizer down, I'll also put a midge treatment. We have an issue with midge in this part of the country. It's a little gnat that the adults lay an egg in the tip of the growing stem, and it kills it, and it won't produce any flowers. So if you don't treat it, you can end up with a garden with no flowers. So I've been using triazicide from Spectracide, a granular product. I put that down also with the fertilizer in the spring before I mulch over, and just to treat that, because they start when the soil temperature gets around, I think 42, 43 degrees is when they start becoming active and hatching. And they have a real short life cycle, like 10 days, 7 to 10 days. So the egg will hatch, it'll fly up, lay the egg, the egg will drop into the ground, it'll pupate, turn into the adult, and 7 to 10 days later, you've got another adult doing the same thing. And if you don't treat it, you can have a green garden with, not too many blooms in. And then the one other thing I'll put down is the Epsom salts, for basal breaks, just maybe a handful, per bush. I just broadcast that in the beds too. And then, I don't scratch anything in, it all just gets put down, and then I put a 2 or 3 inch layer of mulch on top of it, and Mother Nature will put it in the ground for me when it rains or if I'm watering.
Great. Since you mentioned midge, there is a question. If you blow out your leaves, do you have a problem with midge?
I don't think it really matters.
No, I don't think it matters.
They drop down, and I guess when it starts to get cold, I guess they'll drop to the ground and they'll just overwinter in the ground, as in the pupal stage until the spring. So it's not really mattering, whether you're blowing anything out. And then in the spring, when it gets warm, the adults are going to fly in and, start laying eggs again to start the process.
It's when the eggs hatch and the larvae eat the tips. So it looks like someone just took a match to the end of the growing cane and it burnt, so there's no bud there. I'll spray Bio Advanced in April. I'll just almost like a soil drench, and then usually in July I'll do it a second time. There was one year, probably 15, 20 years ago, where I had probably 40 to 60% of my canes had midged, so there was hardly a whole lot of bloom. So I sprayed, I think it was Bayer at that time, 10 days apart, and almost had 100% eradication of the midge. A funny story of the midge, and this goes back 25 years ago, before I knew how to handle this. I had a gorgeous Dublin basil brake that was midged, and so I cut back and it grew another cane that was midged too, and it grew another cane, and that actually produced my first national queen in Cleveland. So I don't recommend exhibiting that way. That was just happened to work out that way. But I don't let midge live in the yard if I can help it.
Yeah, we visited a garden in New Jersey. It was a display garden for one of the nurseries over there, and it was for a fall convention, and they probably have 500 or 600 roses in a big display garden. And we visited in September, and there was maybe 4 dozen blooms in the whole garden, and 2 dozen were probably on a carefree wonder bush. So, it was a scattered bloom here and there, and they had no idea what was wrong. And Don Myers took them over and showed them. He peeled back one of the tips, and you could see the larva's about 1/3 of the size of a grain of rice. And they said, well, what can we do? He said, well, you treat it now, you can cut the ends off, treat it, spray it, put something on the ground is where you want to eradicate them at. He said, and you're not going to probably have many roses this fall. He said, but, the bushes are big and strong. So next spring you'll have a really nice, display. But they had no idea. And that's the first I had learned about midge too. I didn't really know much about it. But you want to kill them at the ground. And Ken said about the soil drench, I did that a couple years. I used to use diazinon granules when they when they had it, and they took them off the market. And then I switched over to the Bear, insect control. But if you only do that once in the spring, you end up seeing midge later in the season. So because of watering and rain, it'll leach through quicker. So a few years back, I went back to a granular product, and I put that down in the spring, and that gives me pretty much season-long control. I just didn't want to have to do a second application with the liquid. And our friend Tom Mayo said the same thing. He had the same issue. He did it once, and then he had an issue. So then he started doing it probably after, the end of June, after our first big flush, he would do, or beginning of July, he would do a second application to carry it through the rest of the summer and fall. So it's something you just kind of have to stay ahead of.
Great. Some more questions about fertilizer are coming through. Let me just back up here.
Craig, I'm going to have to bow out. I appreciate you guys. Thank you for covering. And anyway, so I have to leave. I'm sorry.
Oh, thanks, Linda.
Thank you for
Always
your
nice seeing you.
Linda.
Bye.
Take care, Linda. Have a nice day.